everyone, welcome back to Info 3370, studying social inequality with data science at Cornell. Today we're talking about racial wealth gaps. We're going to look at those using the Survey of Consumer Finances, a nationally representative sample survey which asks detailed questions about households' assets and also oversamples high wealth individuals, so it really can help us get a full look at the U.S. wealth distribution. On the course website, there's a landing page for this exercise, and you can load some prepared SCF data by copying this line over. And before loading that data, you're going to need to load the tidyverse package so that you have the read CSV function. So there I've got tidyverse, and I've loaded the data. So what have we got here? We have a data set where each row represents a household. We have the racial category of that household, the household's reported wealth, and then a survey weight. So our first question here is going to be to look at quantiles of the distribution. In particular, we're going to look at the median wealth of white households and the median wealth of black households. In order to estimate median wealth with weights, we're going to use a weighted quantile function. We've written one of these in class before, but that's not the goal today. So if you run this source code, you'll automatically get in your environment here a weighted quantile function. And if we look at that, we see that it's a function that takes a vector of numbers, some quantile of interest, like the 50th percentile, and then a vector of weights on all the observations. So we're just going to use this function in order to estimate weighted medians here. So our first task is to look at the ratio of wealth between white and black households. And in fact, we're actually going to look at the ratio of the median white household's wealth to the median black household's wealth. You can think of this as how many dollars the typical white family has compared with how many dollars the typical black family has. And here, dollars that you have includes money in the bank and like the value of your home and ownership of assets. So you should pause the video right now and try to answer the question for yourself. For incomes, the median white family has a household income 1.7 times the income of the median black family using these data. So pause the video and ask yourself, for wealth, how many dollars do I think the median white family has for every dollar held by the median black family? Okay, you made a guess? Now we're going to go ahead and calculate it. So we're going to start with the SCF data, and we're going to group by race. And then we're going to summarize by creating a new variable, wealth, and that's going to be the weighted median of this wealth variable. So weighted quantile, x equals wealth, q equals 0.5 for the median, and the weight is going to be that survey weight. So if I run this code, I get a data frame here that has the racial categories in the data and the median wealth in each case. Then we want to pivot wider to move wealth into multiple columns so we can calculate a ratio of these medians. So I'm going to pivot wider. My names are going to come from race, and my values are going to come from wealth. Okay, so now I've got a data frame with those variables, and here we're going to look at the black-white gap. So I'm going to select black and white. Okay, and then I'm going to calculate the ratio. So mutate ratio equals, we're going to get how many dollars the white family has divided by how many dollars the black family has. And it's huge. The median white family has $7.85 for every dollar held by the median black family. This is a really extreme example of inequality, and it illustrates how wealth is distributed much more unequally in the US than income is distributed. This ratio also calls back to what we've just discussed about the historical processes that produced racial disparities in wealth across US households. So the next part of the exercise is to look at the proportion with low and high wealth. So in particular, let's look at what proportion of households have less than $10,000, roughly the value of a moderately good used car, and what proportion have greater than $100,000 of wealth within racial categories. So if you're watching the video, you could pause right now and write down a guess. What proportion of black and white families do you think have less than $10,000 and have more than $100,000? Okay, you got a guess? So let's go ahead and calculate it. So we're going to take the data. As before, we're going to group by race, and then we're going to summarize and create a variable less than 10K for the proportion with less than $10,000. That's going to be a weighted mean of a logical variable indicating that wealth is less than $10,000 with weights from the survey weight. And likewise, more than 100K is going to be the weighted mean of a logical variable indicating that wealth is greater than $100,000 weighted by the survey weights. And if we run this code, we get our answer. So among black households, 42% have less than $10,000 of household wealth. Meanwhile, among white households, that's extremely rare. Only 16% of white households have less than $10,000 of household wealth. If we go to the top end of the distribution and think about what proportion have a lot of wealth, defined as more than $100,000, we see here that 27% of black households have more than $100,000, a relatively small proportion. Meanwhile, 63% of white households have more than $100,000. When we think about wealth inequality in America, we have to realize that not only does the white median household have way more wealth than the median black household, but also black households disproportionately have very low levels of wealth, even less than $10,000, while white households disproportionately have very high levels of wealth, with most of them having more than $100,000. So wealth inequality is really stark in America. And if this is something of interest to you, I think this is something you could totally explore further and make additional summaries using the Survey of Consumer Finances about these racial wealth disparities.